I'm here with Carl Cannon, and our guest is Spencer Kimball. He is the executive director of Emerson College Polling. So, Spencer, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me.
So, you've got this new poll out today about the New Jersey governor's race. The election will be held this November. Let's start there. Mikie Sherrill, I guess, is the Democratic candidate. Jack Ciattarelli is the Republican. How's the race shaping up?
Well, we see a very competitive race here in Jersey. I know a lot of polling had shown Mikie Sherrill with a 9-10 point lead, but we see it as a toss-up, 43-43. And interesting dynamics happening with Governor Phil Murphy. His popularity seems to be down, and that might be dragging Sherrill in this race.
You know, I should tell our listeners and viewers, if you're watching us on our YouTube channel, Spencer Kimball does polling for Real Clear Opinion Research. So we work closely with him. And Andy and I, when it comes to Spencer Kimball, we don't pretend to be objective, but Spencer's polls are objectively usually the best out there or among the top of the, they're right. They're always at the top. So this number, Spencer, it jumped out at me. And if it hadn't have been you, I would have maybe wanted to say, well, that seems like an outlier. But because it's you, I think maybe the poll's moving. The dynamic has changed there, that the race has actually tightened. Is that your perception as well?
Well, I don't know if it's tightened or if it was always tight. This is our first poll out there. And, you know, we saw this back in 21. Those polls were really high on Murphy, and that was a 3-point race. Now, we had it between 4 and 6, which was a tight race, but most of the numbers were very high, and that's what we were seeing. So to your point, when I saw those returns coming, you know, I'm looking at the raw data, and at first I'm like, okay. And then I'm like, whoa, this is not an 8. This is a toss-up. In fact, you could say that the Republican's going to win this race, because when you look at the likely voter, it leans towards Jack. And I'm like, the energy is with the Republican. But if you kind of just looked at it from the balcony, you would have thought that Sherrill was really had a lot of energy there. We're not seeing that in our numbers.
Yeah, so let me just
go ahead.
Give a little context here, because the RCP average has Sherrill up 6.5%. Here's a couple of recent polls. Quinnipiac shows her up 9, Qantas up 10, and TIP up 7. So that's why for our viewers and listeners, this is kind of an important poll, because Spencer's either right or he's an outlier.
I feel like we do this every 2 months. I mean, I'm not going to go through our track record, but I feel like some of these other folks are the outliers here. Yeah. You know, we've polled this Jersey for 3 elections, 17, 21, and 25 now. We've been off by about 2 points. So, yeah, we might be off by 2 points, and it could go to Sherrill's side. It could go to Jack's side. You know, it's up for grabs. But if you think this thing's in the bag for the Democrat, I don't see it in our numbers.
Well, Donald Trump's been on the scene now for 10 years, right? And we've always had this question, and it's played out in different ways in different states. But the big question is, can Republicans compete in the era of Trump when Trump himself is not on the ballot? And what this number suggests to me is that that argument has changed a little bit. The question now is, even at a time when the president is unpopular in some places, his policies are unpopular. The question is the Democratic brand been so tarnished that, you know, can Democrats compete no matter how unpopular Trump is?
And first I'm going to say is Trump is not as unpopular today as he was 8 years ago. Okay. So in our polling in Jersey, he was a -21. Now he's a -10. So I'm not saying, throwing a parade, but they're not as angry. Who is they're angry at is Governor Phil Murphy. He was a +6. He was up at 49. Now he's at 35% approval. So that's where you run into some of the state issues. So Sherrill's trying to connect Ciattarelli with Trump at the federal level. And at the state level, Jack is trying to connect Sherrill with Murphy. And it's a very interesting dynamic on a state race. And it looks like it's working for Jack right now, because you would have expected Sherrill to be up by more based on like the historical context of the race.
What are the issues in New Jersey? I'm sorry, Andy. I jumped. Go ahead. Spencer, what are the issues in New Jersey that may not be, national issues? Are there any different dynamics there in terms of policies?
Economy, number one. It's like, 52 to, and then you throw in affordable housing. So like on the federal level, like Gavin Newsom, he can talk about threats to democracy. because that's federally what people care. But when we ask them, what do you care about in your state? That's not really what's pushing them. It's going to be the economy, and those are the Republican issues. So you're probably going to see Sherrill switch over into education, talk more on education, because that's more of a Democratic issue. But if she gets locked into taxes and the economy, that might help play it out for the Republican. I mean, it's a long road to Election Day, but the early voting is going to start soon. So we'll get an indication there as well of what the turnout's looking like.
I did want to, you mentioned it, but I think it's worth noting in 2021, Murphy beat Ciattarelli only by 2.8 points, right? So it does.
And that was a surprise. Remember how
yeah,
close
that
it
was a surprise. He did pretty well. And Ciattarelli's been around now for a while. He's better known in the state. Trump is more popular than he was, as you point out. So it does seem to me that that sort of 9 or 10 point, delta does seem a little too large for if you just look at the history of how Ciattarelli has run previously in the state.
Yeah. And in the presidential history, Trump lost this state by 15, 16, then 6. So you could see so the people of New Jersey said, no, I'm going to go with the Democrat. I'm going to go with the Democrat. And then 10% was like, no, I'm going to switch over. Why did they move over? So you got to see those numbers and be like, that's actually happening. And that's an opportunity for Jack. Now, remember, Jack as a Republican, last time he was like a 40-40 favorable, unfavorable. In 2017, it was Christie's lieutenant governor who was running, and she was underwater. So Murphy was basically saying, I'm not part of the Christie administration. So Murphy, in my opinion, kind of got a cakewalk in to the governor's. Last race was a tough race. He ran against a good opponent, and it was very close. This race is, again, Jack, I think, is still a good opponent, and we'll see if Sherrill is able to, get over the top.
Yeah. Spencer, when you say that, you remind me. So we have these two states, Virginia and New Jersey, and they get to go the first off year, the year before the midterms. And so everybody pays more attention to them than they would otherwise. For years, Virginia was, a purple state. And if Virginia goes the way the polling looked like there, we're going to have to say Virginia is a blue state. It's gone for the Democrat in the last several presidential elections. It will have 2 Democratic senators, a Democratic governor. But New Jersey, which was always a blue state, may be moving into purple territory. And this, we talk about swing states, the 7 or 8 swing states, but it's not the same 7 states for 20 years. There's always one state that drops out of that list and another 1 or 2 adds on. And I'm wondering if we're seeing like a historical shift where Virginia's becoming more liberal and New Jersey's becoming more conservative.
Well, we saw New Jersey kind of swing this way back in 2004 with Bush. He only lost the state by about 6 points. So, but then boom, it goes right back with Obama. So if you have the right messenger, certainly there's an appetite for where the Republicans are. But again, and you look at that big picture, Murphy lost, he wins by 16, then it goes down to 3. So it's a 13-point swing. Biden wins by 15, then it goes down to 6, a 9-point. So it's trending away from the Democratic issues. And if I'm on the Democratic side, I'm concerned about that because that's a safe state. Now, you also have some other, baggage in the state. You got Menendez going on. So there's always, a couple of things percolating under there. But I think the real issue is Murphy. I don't think the governor is leaving office on a high note.
And you do have this sort of tradition in some of these blue states of electing a Republican, which I'm thinking of Charlie Baker up in Massachusetts, where you are, or Maryland, where I am, or for that matter, Chris Christie in New Jersey. So, they sometimes like to have someone in the
even Youngkin in Virginia.
Virginia, yeah. Hey, I want to ask you about New York governor's mayor's race. I'm sorry, while we're talking about this, you had Mondami up 15 points in your poll back in September 8th. The RCP average has him up 18.7% at this point. Is that race over? Is this in the bag?
Pretty much. Without Sliwa or Adams dropping out, and even if they drop out, I don't know if that's the game changers at this point. But yeah,
Spencer, they waited too long. If they both dropped out now, right?
That's what I'm saying is that Cuomo, I think, has a ceiling. And we saw that in the primary. He couldn't get over 35, 36 in the Democratic primary. And what happened was over the course of 3 months, Mamdani was able to eventually get there because there was these undecided voters, but they knew they weren't going to vote for Cuomo. And I think he's in the same boat. He doesn't seem to get over 28, 29 in any of these polls, and it's probably going to melt. So he's probably, we got one poll to do right before Halloween, and we'll see if there's any changes in that race. But from what I've seen out there, it looks Mamdani's going to have this. Now, that might influence this New Jersey race, because Sherrill is doing well with younger voters, and she has not taken a position on endorsing Mamdani's candidacy. And if they create a wedge there and she loses some of that younger support, that would be detrimental, because she's doing so well with that younger vote that and not well with the older vote. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out locally here too.
Hey, we just got a few minutes left. I do want to ask you about the generic congressional ballot too. You had that as a tie back in August 26th. I go back and I read your polls because
they don't go stale that quickly.
Yeah, but the RCP average has the Dems up 3.6%. So you have them tied, as I said. How does that stack up compared to other midterms? And what do you think is going to happen?
Generally, a wave year, you're going to see a 7 to 8 point spread. So the Dems, they would be excited if they see that. You've seen some polls where you've seen it at double digits at different times. So it's percolating in that direction, but we don't necessarily see it that way. First of all, there's a lot of gerrymandering going on where certain House seats are not going to, it is going to be what it is. But we don't see a wave right now. And I think this governor's race is an interesting thing, because in the likely voter, Jack is winning, but the somewhat likely voter, Sherrill, is winning. And it's like a lot of people are sitting on the sideline waiting for that energy. And we'll see what the left does to create some of that energy as well.
Well, Spencer, we're the last week of September. If your campaign hasn't caught fire by now, this election is the first week of November. We're not far away.
No, you have early voting starting. And so we're going to see this. And, that was Harris's problem. We did that race. She had a lot of people sitting on the sideline who just weren't energized to go out and vote, and they didn't vote. And if that happens in New Jersey, that would be a detriment probably to the Democrat. And we'll see what the Republicans are. But it's a tight race. It can go in either direction. But when you look at that internal data, it was surprising to see Jack doing as well, considering what you had seen publicly before.
Yeah. All right. Spencer, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks for coming on. Always great. And we'll be keeping an eye on these polls. And we'll have you back after the election and see where you were right and where you were.
He's rarely wrong, Andy.
Rarely wrong. I didn't say
I appreciate
wrong.
it.
Right. Yeah.
I'll bring my humble pie with me, but hopefully a few victory laps. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Right. Well, thanks, Spencer. We've been talking to Spencer Kimball. I'm Andrew Walworth. I've been with Carl Cannon. That's our program for today. Have a great evening. We'll see you back here tomorrow.